All right, so today we're going to dive into another project analysis that is one that has been doing an excellent job, I think, one on both awareness, but also on its mission towards data privacy in the blockchain. And that is Rose. You might know it as the token, but the project is called Oasis. Joining me today, of course, is Ekin Tuna. He'll be jumping in on the show today. My name is Paul Barron. Welcome back to TechPath. Let's jump into it with Ekin a little bit. First of all, Ekin, thanks for coming on the show. We appreciate you guys stopping in today for sure.
Absolutely. Thank you, Paul. I'm excited to be here.
Excellent. All right, so you're head of business development, partnerships. How do you guys go about, first of all, let's learn a little bit about Oasis as a whole, what you're trying to do for some of our listeners and also our viewers. Tell me a little bit about Oasis, the protocol, kind of the mission of what you guys are up to.
For sure. So Oasis is a layer one blockchain. We're scalable. We have low gas fees, high transaction throughput, and we're essentially here to revolutionize the DeFi marketplace and bring it really to the masses. We have a number of key backers, including Andreessen Horowitz, Binance Labs, and many others. And basically, we just raised our ecosystem fund of $200 million, and we're looking to take over the market with that.
Ekin, tell me a little bit about when I look at the project and in general, one of the things that Oasis is known for is privacy in the blockchain itself. And I think a lot of people look at blockchain and they think of it as open. And, you know, to a certain extent, you can pretty much track anything out there on the blockchain in terms of wallet activity, transaction levels, speeds, throughputs, all those kind of things that typically are not available in traditional finance. Explain how you guys are going to create a more private component when it comes to DeFi.
This is a very good question, Paul. So yeah, as you mentioned, normally the data in blockchains is transparently and it's open to and available for everybody. So if you look at like Ethereum blockchain or any of the other public blockchains, you can take any wallet address and see the transaction history. And we know that there's a lot of companies that are currently working on classifying addresses, clustering them, and then kind of creating identifiable entities out of those. And this data is extremely valuable. It is the same as any user data. It's kind of the modern oil.
Mm-hmm.
So how we go about this is we use a piece of technology called Intel SGX and other trusted execution environments in our Cypher paradigm. And essentially, we make it so that it's possible to execute pieces of code within the trusted execution environment, thus giving privacy to the transactions and to the things that are recorded in the blockchain.
All right, so
That's
custom code enables kind of a layer protocol on top of what's riding right now in the blockchain, gives you guys the ability to essentially create some sort of layer security or privacy. And a lot of people have complained about this, in the essence of mass adoption. A lot of people, their first time into blockchain, when they realize their wallet essentially is out there for everyone to see, they quickly realize and quickly understand all those transactions are now traceable. And in essence, they can, if you're not really ready for it, in many cases, you can actually reveal your wealth, the kind of transactions, and also just in general, where that whole component is going in terms of just privacy. Talk to me about data tokenization. How would that plug into Oasis and solve this problem for, the DeFi space?
Yeah, so data tokenization. So, okay, we look at NFTs in a slightly different way than other of the industry participants. So
Right.
NFTs are pieces of unique code where data can be recorded on an abstract level. Data
Mm-hmm.
tokens are essentially tokens that have other types of data than just like a nice picture or a playable game character like many of the other NFTs have. But things like financial records from your bank account or your healthcare records that are still data that can be put into a database and stored is we allow the data tokens to govern access to those. So essentially, it's possible to take this data token and give it to a healthcare provider and
Mm-hmm.
say that the healthcare provider now has access to all of my healthcare records. let's say in a case that I'm in a foreign country and I need to access a hospital, this is a secure way to give them access and then also revoke the access afterwards. And the similar thing with financial transactions, website browser cookies, anything else, anything essentially that you can tokenize, anything that is data can be put here. And for the user, it offers the benefit of essentially, giving back the rights to own their data and then generating a possibility of having revenue from it. Because none of the data that we currently produce with our daily behavior and activities online allows us to really control it at all or allows us to generate value from it. So this is how we look at it.
Yeah. How far have you guys come since the mainnet launch?
We've had an explosive year. I can say that. So we launched the mainnet, I think, as a context for people who don't know, it was November 2020. So it's been 1 year, 4 months around,
Right.
2-3 months, whatever. And we've had a lot of stuff happening since. So we increased the validator amounts in our network. So we have 110 validators currently, including all the top names in the industry. So
Right.
this is available in our wallet scanner. We also had a successful governance proposal with more than 85% participation. And those who aren't familiar with that, that's basically decentral deciding what kind of code upgrade goes into the Oasis core in a decentralized way. We also launched 3 paradigms. So we have Emerald. Emerald is an EVM compliant, fully EVM compliant paradigm that essentially allows you to do anything that you want to do with any other paradigm. Offers the benefits of high transaction throughput, scalability, and so on. We launched Cypher. Cypher is our WebAssembly Rust smart contract paradigm, and this is where we see the privacy aspects of Oasis really shining. So to really be able to access confidential compute in a decentralized environment. And then we launched Parcel SDK. Parcel SDK is the basically the first governance SDK that allows to use these data tokenization features. We also launched Rose Wallet and browser extension. We integrated into the Wormhole network. So basically, it's possible to bridge assets from Avalanche, Solana, Binance Smart Chain, Terra, many of the other very valuable DeFi blockchains. We also launched our ecosystem fund. The ecosystem fund, as earlier mentioned, got $200 million in participation from the top names in the space. So Binance Labs, Jump Capital, many others. Our community exploded. So we have more than 10x our entire community in the course since we launched Mainnet. We have more than 160K users now. We are represented in more than 24 countries with language-specific and country-specific groups. We also have more than 300 ambassadors. So we have very active ambassador community and overall our community. And I think perhaps the most exciting thing that happened was the launch of our DeFi. So 11th of January, we had Uniswap launching. And in less than 12 hours, they got more than $100 million of TVL in their DEX. So these all were kind of, just how it has been since the mainnet launch. And I'm sure you can imagine how crazy it has been on our end.
Yeah, I was just looking at DeFi Llama on your TVL right now at 126 million. So I think that has been probably one of the big reasons that Rose has started to see such activity here recently, especially the all-time high it just reached in terms of a token. I think a lot of people are really interested in kind of the focus of where that's going. And the $200 million fund for ecosystem development, kind of that expansion beyond what you're talking about, because since the mainnet, you guys have done a lot. Where would you focus in that, kind of that investment and really take Rose to the next level or Oasis to the next level? What areas are you going to focus on?
Yeah, this is kind of tying down to, let's say, our roadmap for 2022. So what we're looking at is essentially now we're starting to build our DeFi ecosystem. So what we need to focus on and really build for the network is the DeFi primitives, DEXs, lending, DeFi 2.0 with these yield aggregators and all that good stuff that brings the TVL and the liquidity into the network. Then what we're looking also is the NFT space, NFTs, play to earn, Metaverse itself. to fuel that. And we see the Emerald paradigm as the home for all the NFT and Metaverse stuff in the Oasis network.
Okay.
And then also, we really want to focus on the privacy aspect. So privacy DeFi in the Cypher paradigm is another aspect that we will be building in 2022. And I'm tying this down to this year essentially because we just started with the ecosystem fund. And kind of how we look to fuel and support developers to get into the ecosystem fund is a couple of different ways. There's just a direct application that can be put into our website. But we're also in the first half of 2022, so in the next 6 months, essentially, we're running 2 acceleration programs, one with MetaMinds Labs and one with DApp Radar.
Okay.
And then we're also running 2 hackathons. So these are places where developers can come in and find let's say, explain to us what kind of support they really need. So do they need support with community? Do they need it with the financing or marketing or figuring out the business plan? We're there to support them with all these things and make sure they have a very good experience in integrating their business into the Oasis network. So this is kind of how we're looking at where would we use the ecosystem fund and how do we, make sure that it's properly utilized.
You mentioned, okay, so growing both in kind of just developer outreach in general. You mentioned Rust earlier. Is that the core code that you guys are developing on?
So basically the code base has different languages, but yes, Rust is the main language that we use. Yes, that's correct. So for the Cypher, oh, sorry. Yeah.
I'm just kind of curious, are you having any challenges in terms of developer acquisition utilizing Rust versus say Solidity or other blockchain development platforms?
Yeah, so the smart contracts in Rust in Cypher are coming out in Q1. So essentially Cypher is deployed in the mainnet. It's producing blocks as expected, but the smart contract module is going to be enabled in Q1. We do know that the Rust developer community, as you pointed out, is very small in the space. So, we're very confident that the deck that we have built is attractive for those developers because it's all developed with the developers in mind.
Okay, so let's jump. All right, so because I'm always curious, when you get into scalability for any network, one of the core things is having just a really robust developer network and kind of the expansion capacity of that developer network as it starts to grow. So hackathons and just being able to get out there to those development teams and really kind of sway them into the network is going to be a key process for you guys to really grow this year. When you look at the development on gaming, play to earn, the metaverse, and really what that means around, especially in privacy, because I think within the metaverse, we'll probably see a lot more need for privacy and data tokenization, as some sort of handoff tool within the metaverse, whether it's an e-commerce solution, maybe it's getting into, handing, like what you had mentioned earlier, in cross-chain compatibility and capability there. Where do you see some of the big challenges as you guys go into the metaverse and or into play to earn gaming? What are some of the big things that you're trying to attack and overcome?
Yeah, so this ties also down to the idea of kind of private data. So we've seen basically in this year, 2021, the NFT space was, it started basically from zero and it expanded to the giant behemoth like it is now. It's first of all been amazing to see all the projects put in all the effort and bring all of this to the blockchain space. It's wonderful to see all the other, what has been there. And I think what we see coming for 2022 is kind of, let's say, expansion of the NFT from just the art and generative art sets,
right?
As you mentioned, to the play to earn gaming, and then to other aspects of it, and precisely to leverage the kind of confidential computing data to allow for more real world use cases. So when it comes to game items, for example, ownership of those is also, if it's in a public blockchain, it's possible to track it. It's possible to collect data on it and sell it and monetize it just as it is in the item itself. And as with anything, any public blockchain. So the concept of having, confidential data where you can choose who you reveal the data to and who doesn't get to see it, is something that's, going to be, let's say, overarching in the entire blockchain space.
Mm-hmm.
That's how we see it, at least. And this is also something that we believe will come to the metaverse and NFTs. So, as mentioned earlier, the expansion of NFTs from just art pieces into healthcare data, into financial data, into even, private DeFi, which we can talk about later. But we see kind of the NFT space and metaverse becoming a bit more mature and getting a bit more of let's say, sensitive data and much more mass adoption because of that.
Yeah, well, you're right. I mean, the point that I think a lot of people have seen in 2021 was kind of the Wild West approach toward NFTs. It's just getting as many projects into application and use case scenarios as possible, most of which have been, traditional art style NFTs. But now we're seeing a lot of utility being implemented into a lot of these programs, both off the case of play to earn and even outside of metaverse, just in general NFT utility and like in real world aspects like you're mentioning with financial, medical records, all kinds of sort of use case scenarios that could start to flow in that direction. But back to metaverse and play to earn, because that's one of the areas that I see probably the biggest explosion this year in terms of adoption, because we will see a massive crowd to continue to adopt and play to earn. With that being coming, because I think what's happening now is we have a lot of the guide rails being set up, both in the metaverse projects that are out there being developed, as well as the play to earn. Privacy is going to be one of the key ones that will be very critical. Are you guys working with any current play to earn gaming groups and or metaverse platforms to maybe implement what Oasis is trying to do from a privacy standpoint?
Yes, we are working with some, and I have to say some of this information is going to come later, as it's not yet announced. But some of the things we've announced is NFTB's integration into our network. We've also announced a number of things on the medical healthcare data. But I think what I can say confidently now about the acceleration programs is that they're acquiring and getting teams that are building in the metaverse, building NFT projects and play-to-earn gaming. And without revealing anything further about the names, I can say that yes, we're doing that, and more to come in Q1, if that's all right.
I see you sidestepping that question eloquently there, so I understand. So it sounds to me like we're going to have some metaverse and some gaming activity coming from Oasis soon, and I think that has been a big challenge and will continue to be a big challenge in this space. We've had a couple of projects that are looking at this direction in terms of security measurements in blockchain for things such as financial NFTs, revocable NFTs, which is a big deal with gaming. If you have, say, something like digital assets within Axie Infinity right now, it's a little bit clunky to develop, a scholar program to where you're having to, bring people on to play the game, which is what a lot of these gaming guilds have been doing. So any kind of NFT vehicle that can create, one, privacy, and two, that kind of connection to where you could, to a certain extent, revoke that as an asset would be very interesting, I think, as we continue to see this grow. How big the current ecosystem, I was looking at the chart that you guys had, and this thing is huge. So you've got layered wallets and custodians. Let me kind of zoom in on this just a little bit. I want to kind of flow in on a couple of areas. One, of course, is the wallet area, but at the same time, you guys have launched your own wallet, and then you've got, of course, all the big application partners, and then the DeFi seems to be exploding as well. Is there one area, other than what we've seen so far, that you guys are really focused on for 2022? Would it be gaming and metaverse, or do you feel like there's other categories?
Yes. So we were focusing on building the ecosystem overall. So it's a holistic process for us. So when we look at an ecosystem, it depends on different components on it. But the main focuses for 2022 will be DeFi in the beginning to really get those bootstrapping that, and then NFT and play to earn gaming afterwards.
Okay.
And aside of that, so this is where we see the home for Emerald paradigm, the EVM compliant paradigm that we have. And then essentially from there, moving into the Cypher paradigm, which allows to one of the cool things is that people necessarily don't know about the Oasis network is that it's possible to have in the future cross-paradigm communication, which means that the applications that are built on the Emerald paradigm, thinking in terms of DeFi, NFT, play-to-earn gaming, they will be able to talk to the Cypher paradigm and interact with smart contracts there. So let's say there's a play-to-earn MM that needs to, let's say identify their user for whatever purpose it is, or use some confidential computing aspects. It's possible to leverage the Cypher paradigm in a way that the developer can still keep their application in Emerald and the existing user base without any large migrations, and just use the module that they require for the specific purpose in any of the other paradigms. So we're kind of looking into building the ecosystem in a modular way like this. That being said, the cross-paradigm communication is not out yet, but it is planned for 2022, and that's, we're looking at it kind of this way. So rather than building everything from scratch every single time, we'll look at making it very interoperable and allowing this interaction to happen, and then through this give the developers a very good experience and the users as well.
Yeah. Explain to me the cross-chain applications that you've implemented so far. You had mentioned this with your with the Rose wallet. How does that work? What chains are you essentially compatible with, and what kind of adoption rate are you seeing with cross-chain usage?
Yeah, so we integrated the wormhole bridge. The wormhole bridge basically allows Emerald EVM to connect to a number of other blockchains, so layer ones. So we're Binance Smart Chain, Avalanche, Solana, Ethereum, Terra. I might be leaving out a few, but please forgive me about that. So the adoption rate has been pretty strong. It has been a week now, and the TVL has been essentially between 100 to 200 million. And when we look at that, it is around, I would imagine, 50 to 75% that is coming from through the bridge.
Interesting.
So,
okay, well that's good.
Yeah.
I think
I'm sorry. Yeah.
Go ahead. You were going to close out on a thought there.
Yeah. Just to say that we expect, of course, a lot of other interconnection points between other chains. So we know that wormhole is expanding, and we expect other ways to communicate with other layer ones chains as well in the future.
Before we get into private DeFi, because you mentioned that, I want to kind of explore that just a little bit. How would you compare Oasis, I mean, especially on layer ones, to something like what we've seen in Solana, Avalanche, Phantom, et cetera? How does Oasis kind of stack up against those projects?
Yeah, that's a very good question. So, it was like let's say 2 years ago, something like this, when DeFi really started. And we've seen a tremendous growth since then. I think we're close to 250 billion now. I don't know what the exact number is, but we're about that ballpark. And a lot of that is thanks to the projects. The other peer projects that are out there, there has been wonderful work from their side, and it's really taken everybody far ahead. How we look at it is like the pie is big enough for everybody. So the financial, the capital flow essentially comes from traditional finance, and also partially from Ethereum at the moment to other, scalable layer ones. And we believe in this idea of multi-chain coexistence. So we will see a much more capital and adoption coming into all the scalable layer ones. And what we offer, of course, is a EVM that is high transaction throughput wise, is scalable in the network in itself completely. So this is kind of how we look at it in terms of how we compare to the other chains. So pie is getting bigger, and there's plenty of room for everybody.
Yeah, I would agree. I think the kind of the complementary chains that are out there, projects that we continue to see being built on. We've had Avalanche on the show many times. We've done just extensive research on Solana and kind of its growth again. And I think a lot of what's happening right now, we've seen this with Polygon in layer 2, is congestion issues, scenarios where we are seeing, transaction speeds being challenged in the early stages. And we understand that. I think even our audience understands that in the early days of development, especially in the beginning of launching these projects, typical, road bumps are going to be in the way. So it is something that I think we'll continue to see. Do you feel like that is something that Oasis will start to have to deal with in essence of their growth? It's kind of the growing pains aspect, or have you guys already gone through those growing pains already?
So we have essentially, since Mainnet, we've been fully operational. There hasn't been a Mainnet downtime. I think some of this is thanks to we have a very rigorous internal audit process when it comes to looking at the code, making sure that anything we deploy is fully vetted. So that can, lead into, more slower and more certain development process. But we really when we look at the mainnet, we want to be sure on what we deploy there. We'll see in the future what happens when the network scales more. But so far, seeing the transactions that we haven't had any issues in that regard.
Yeah, so far so good. I was looking at the comparison here to Ethereum, TPS up to 1,000 versus 13 on the transaction per second, low trans fees, high trans fees. Parallel execution for complex transactions. So that's intriguing in terms of what Oasis can do there. One that I find, and this gets into the privacy side, is the reputation-based under collateralization aspect of DeFi. Does this play into your area of private DeFi? Explain how that will work, because most people that have done any DeFi lending or anything of that nature, it is over collateralized. We see a lot of that happening already. What would be the big change with your approach?
That's a wonderful question. So if we look at the lending platforms currently in DeFi today, what we see is essentially the over collateralization happens because you don't know who the counterparty is. So you have to take 150% of collateral to give them 100% of asset values. And what essentially ends up happening is when the principal drops to 120%, they start liquidating.
Yeah.
So that's what the normal thing is. And what we've seen in the normal, let's say, TradFi, the credit institutions, they exist for a reason. And what they generally are is a giant database of transaction history of every company, every single user that generates a credit rating. And this is what the private deal is to do. And it doesn't have to be through, normal credit rating agencies or anything like this. It can be, but it doesn't have to be. There's a lot of companies that are focusing on decentralized digital identities. So allowing to generate an identity of a person, including transaction history in it, and any other kind of possessions that they have, let's say, and linking that to a blockchain wallet, and giving the user the access to provide that information to any of the protocols they interact with, so that they can access this under collateralized lending. So that's kind of what we see in the under collateralized lending space. And that's what we believe also will be the use case in our network and what we are working towards to building.
Yeah, I think this solves a huge problem that the blockchain eventually would be, I think, challenged by traditional sectors of business, whether it's finance, medical, insurance, all those different areas outside. And maybe I think to a certain extent, maybe getting down into social, and even on the play to earn gaming and metaverse side of it, especially from an e-commerce standpoint, privacy is going to be a scenario that, we've worked really hard in Web 2 for the last 3 decades to develop a privacy layer. Everything with the introduction of SSL, the evolution of what we've seen, encrypted messaging systems, encrypted bank financial transactions, two-factor authentication. All these things have been built on layer 2 or on Web 2, and when we really start to see movement in Web 3, we're not seeing that kind of achievements, I should say, at this point. Now, granted, it's very early, just like it was in 1995 when the internet really started developing. We started seeing e-commerce for the very first time. Security was not really the number one thing we were looking at. And I kind of see that in the blockchain right now. So I think you guys are definitely onto something with where this is going. I want to talk about your wallet, and because I just noticed you guys have staking rewards up to 20% APY, and you've also got the Oasis browser extension, which is privacy integrated into that browser extension and within that wallet itself. How far into the Oasis, protocol does it go?
So those are still based on so we have Oasis architecture is a separated architecture. So we have a consensus layer, which essentially supports the transactions only, and then we have the computational layers, so which are Emerald and Cypher. So the smart contracts are deployed in Emerald and Cypher that then allow the interaction essentially with the consensus layer. So the wallets interact with different levels of this. So with the consensus layer, essentially the web wallet and the Chrome extension wallets, they interact directly with that. And then we also have in EVM, we have the MetaMask that allows to interact directly with the Emerald EVM. So when it comes to the privacy features, those will be enabled when the Cypher paradigm launches the privacy smart contracts. So if you mean the let's say the decentralized identity and these kind of things, those are not yet included in the wallets. But of course, we have done rigorous security audits and this kind of thing. Yeah, it definitely will be huge.
Yeah, I think because a lot of people are looking at wallets right now as a challenge. We're already starting to see the issue of hacks and exploits and things of that nature that have started to take place with wallets, and this is everything from MetaMask, and we've seen it across Trust Wallet, Phantom, etc. Many of those kind of dealing with that scenario. I think the idea, if we can get a wallet down to the level of privacy, especially if you can start handing out data tokens to where you want to transact that, whether it's like on things like collateralizing loans or something of that nature against something that you've got in your wallet. This will be a very interesting protocol as it starts to develop. I think banks and financial institutions are almost going to need this as a base protocol to get moving in that. Do you see that as a big potential for partnerships and development within the Oasis network?
Yeah, I think so, definitely. So the kind of indeed those decentralized identity, those features will allow, let's say like this, one of the core issues that financial institutions currently have is that somebody can identify their transactions. So when they send funds to an exchange, somebody will look at the funds and say, okay, so the market is going to move now. So that's why they are a bit hesitant to still go fully into the, let's say, decentralized future. And they need solutions. They must have solutions that allow them to protect their own privacy. So for that reason, we're gonna see much more of that institutional adoption, but that requires like privacy-focused DeFi protocols to launch as well. Yeah. And they can launch only when there's a way to ensure that the users are KYC'd and they are regulatory compliant. Yeah. So this is the kind of crux, let's say, that we're going to be seeing in 2022 for sure. Yeah.
I think we continue to see the explosion. I think this might be the year we've started to see a handful of banks start to adopt the integration of kind of a pseudo crypto exchange within the bank itself, where you can kind of move in between a checking account or a savings account and a crypto exchange where you can buy and trade. It'll be interesting to see that, especially in the DeFi aspect of it, because if we do see DeFi start to seep into that, I think the traditional banking systems really start to break down just because of the opportunity for yield. And now you get into things like around privacy and just the cross-chain compatibility. All those kind of things really blow up in terms of opportunity. Plus, Play-to-Earn Gaming, Metaverse, you guys are definitely doing some really cool stuff, Ekin, so it's going to be fun to watch for sure. Good luck to you guys over at Oasis, and we appreciate you guys stopping in on the show today.
Absolutely. Thank you, Baron. Paul. Yep. Very nice to be here.
Excellent. All right. So you guys are tuned in over on the podcast right now. Give us some likes over there. We love your feedback. It's great. If you're on the Spotify app right now, did you know you can actually give us some stars on the podcast version of this show? But of course, the number one thing you should be doing is jumping over here to YouTube, subscribing to the channel, because this is the place where we'll do the deep dive interviews, token analysis, all that kind of stuff right here, like what you're seeing on an Oasis and Rose. But also you'll get access to our Diamond Circle, which is where we do even more analysis, and we do something really cool, and that is we give away digital assets and rewards back to our community. So very easy to join, and it's free. Just jump to the link below. You can get into the Diamond Circle. If you want to reach out to me, if you have a show idea or something like that, it's just @Paul Barron on Twitter. We'll catch you next time right here on TechPath.